All right, let's talk about some of the responsibilities as a self-employed person. So, you need to keep records of all income and expenses. So this is things like invoices that you have sent to your clients and respective tax on those invoices. So if you're VAT registered, for example, you'll need to be issuing VAT invoices. And you want to keep records of all this stuff. And as a digital nomad, you'll probably have access to decent bookkeeping software that will let you create invoices literally onto the cloud directly. They're all saved in software. You don't have to worry about keeping paper records or photos of anything. You'll also need to keep your receipts for business expenses. Specifically, if you're VAT registered, you will need a valid VAT receipt in order to reclaim VAT on an expense. This is because if Hmrc ever wants to investigate your business for VAT issues, they're going to want to see all of the receipts for the last 6 years, more likely. They'll have a specific period they're investigating, but you basically need to keep invoices and receipts for about 6 years from the date or from the tax year that they were for. So for UK companies and even UK self-employed people, I recommend a software called Free Agent. I'll just write it up here quickly. So I actually have a guide on how to use this software as a limited company specifically, but a lot of the same principles will apply for a sole trader. Luckily these days a lot of things are purchased online or on Amazon, so you'll have a PDF copy of your receipt at least. So the next responsibility as a self-employed digital nomad is self-assessment. So you're going to need to submit one each year to report your self-employed income, or your income from your services, or if you're selling something, your income from that, like dropshipping. And then you're going to want to pay tax and national insurance on that income. And when you actually submit your self-assessment, Hmrc will tell you what to pay based on the profit figure. So they'll just calculate it as normal with the allowances and tax rates for that particular year. And the tax year runs from the 6th of April to the 5th of April of the following year. And the return is due the following 31st of January. So, for example, the 2019-20 tax year will end on the 5th of April 2020. The actual self-assessment and the payment for that tax will be due by the 31st of January 2021. So you've got about 9 months to do all of that. And I mentioned VAT before, but basically if your turnover exceeds £85,000 in the UK, so this is on specific UK services and sales, then you'll need to register the business for VAT. And there's another thing to look out for, which is called VAT MOS. So if you're actually selling digital products to customers, such as ebooks, music, or software they can download, things like that, there's this scheme called VAT MOS where it's tried to make it easier to charge the appropriate VAT rates to EU customers. Because previously you'd have to register for VAT in each EU country that you were selling these digital products to, and it just made it really messy. So VAT MOS lets you do it all in one place, but you will need to charge the appropriate VAT rates for the specific EU country. Luckily, Free Agent does have these different VAT rates built into the software, so if you pick the location of the customer in Free Agent, it'll charge the correct VAT rate. And you only need to do this, they've only recently added this threshold in actually, once your EU sales exceed €10,000. So they've luckily changed it, so if you don't sell that much to the EU, then you only need to register for VAT MOS and start doing this if your sales exceed €10,000. Otherwise, you just use the UK VAT rules. So for example, if in the UK you're not even VAT registered, then there's no need to charge VAT to the EU customers. Like there's just nothing. If you were VAT registered in the UK, then you charge UK VAT to the EU customers. I know that sounds super confusing, but those are the rules for now. We'll have to see what happens when the UK actually leaves the EU and how much they'll change this. But currently, those are the rules. Okay, responsibilities for a limited company. So most of these are going to be very similar to self-employed. So you have to keep the same records of all the invoices your company issues, as well as all the receipts for any expenses it has. You'll need to have yearly accounts, corporation tax return, and the confirmation statement. Do not forget to submit your confirmation statement. This thing here, because if in your first year you forget to submit this and don't get the letter through from Companies House that you've not done it, and you leave it, Companies House will literally just close your company down after a good few months. So definitely remember to submit the confirmation statement, and similarly with the accounts, if they never receive the accounts, they will start closing your company down. And then you would pay the corporation tax, VAT and PAYE to Hmrc. As a single director, your PAYE bill would either be non-existent or minimal. So I obviously recommend an accountant to help you with all this once you start getting a decent amount of income. So especially with a company and any income, there's a lot of elements to actually doing this stuff properly, and if you might not even know what you're not doing, and then later on, years down the line, it might come back to hurt you. So it's best to avoid that circumstance and do it properly from the start. And yes, VAT only applies if you hit the VAT threshold in the UK. So otherwise, no need to charge VAT or deal with that. And of course, register for VAT when appropriate, like I said, and that includes VAT MOS. So remember that €10,000 threshold, you'll have to start doing VAT MOS. And in the UK currently, in order to register for VAT MOS, you actually have to register for a UK VAT number. Now, if your sole purpose for registering for VAT was to bill the EU under the VAT MOS scheme, you don't actually have to charge VAT to your UK customers yet, because the sole purpose of registering was simply to have a VAT number in order to set up VAT MOS. So don't worry, you don't have to charge UK customers VAT when you set up the VAT MOS scheme. And then we start moving on to another similar one here. So submit a self-assessment to report your personal income to Hmrc. And this is going to be your salary and dividends from your business. And finally, as a director, ensure there's always enough profit before taking a dividend. So remember that thing I said where Hmrc could come after you personally, even though you have a limited company? Well, if you don't make sure that there's enough profit in the business and you take the money out and then it can't pay its tax, then that's obviously a problem. You shouldn't be doing that to your company. It's obviously harming it unnecessarily. So we're kind of coming to some interesting areas here. Where exactly do you pay tax as a digital nomad? So if you're a UK citizen and you are leaving the UK in order to travel as a digital nomad, so you've lived in the UK and you have tax residency there and you're a UK citizen, then you generally keep your UK tax residency even while you're traveling. So just double check this statutory residence test. It's pretty detailed on what your tax residency status will be depending on what your circumstances are and how long you've spent outside the UK. If you've been traveling for quite a while, it's likely that this will tell you you do not need to pay taxes to the UK. However, now this is the important one here. If you do not establish tax residency in another country, you would simply report your income to the UK as normal. Now, this is because they often want you to establish a tax residency in another country before they're happy for you to not pay taxes to the UK anymore. And that's the simplest, most straightforward example I can give you of this. So if you're literally a UK citizen and you left the UK to travel as a digital nomad and you don't establish tax residency anywhere else because you don't spend long enough there, you don't work there, then essentially you just keep paying taxes to the UK. It's as simple as that. There's another point I want to make for US citizens who are UK residents and a digital nomad. That's a lot of titles to put together in one, but in this very specific circumstance, I just want to make you aware that you may be able to apply for the foreign earned income exclusion. And if you qualify for this exclusion, you can get about $100,000 of income declared on your tax return in the US without any tax, because it's going to be all foreign income from other sources. So for example, you've been living in the UK for years, you're a tax resident there, you have a legal right to be there and you worked there, and you became a digital nomad and now you're traveling the world, and you don't really visit the US like ever, like you just don't go there, then it's highly likely you'll be eligible for the foreign earned income exclusion. So check that you are no longer a tax resident in the UK by using that statutory residence test. If it is unclear then I do recommend speaking with a tax advisor, because this can get really complicated really quickly. So these are all very straightforward examples I've given you. Obviously, your personal circumstances will vary quite a bit. I'm sure there's a lot of people doing different things, spending different amounts of time in places. So anytime you run into issues where you're just really not sure, I always recommend speaking with a tax advisor, because they'll be able to clarify for you what the specific rules are in the countries you're asking about. And it's better to get it right before the countries come after you for taxes and back taxes and you get into a lot of trouble. So check with a tax advisor if your circumstances are not very clear-cut, straightforward, easy to establish. Okay, so I hope this video was helpful to you guys to kind of get around and wrap your head around what accounting as a digital nomad looks like. And if I did leave anything out of the video, or if you've got any other questions that I might have missed or not mentioned in this video, then please do leave them in the comment section down below. If you found the video helpful, then do leave a like, because that lets me know I've done a good job, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.